Hey everybody, this is Andrea, Paquette, president and co-founder of the Stigma-Free Society. I welcome all of our Facebook and YouTube viewers today, and we are very grateful that you're here with us because we have a very special guest. Today we're going to be talking with Joette Heuft. Is that the correct way to say it?
Hi.
Oh, wow. I'm pretty good at this. I think I'm a little bit French, Paquette, and I'm guessing yours might be a little French. Am I correct?
Yes, the Belgian background actually.
Oh, okay.
The German French kind of.
Nice. Great. Well, Joette, thank you for being here today. First and foremost, I just thought I could share a little bit of your bio with everybody, and so people can get to know you. And I'd also love to talk about the Square Peg Society, and also a little about the Community Impact Award. And does that sound good to you?
Sure.
Okay, great. Your bio is a little bit long, but I will definitely do my absolute best to make it awesome. All right.
I didn't spend much time on my bio because it's so not where I've come. I mean, in terms of the Square Peg Society work, it's a complete reversal.
Well, okay, I'd love to share it with everybody. So Joette Heuft is the executive director of the Square Peg Society. This is an organization founded by a small group of parents that were frustrated with the lack of services and supports that both recognize the potential of autism spectrum disorder adults and provided them opportunities for living purposeful, happy lives. Joette was one of those parents, and her post-secondary education was a BA in Fine Arts, a diploma from Emily Carr, and a Bachelor of Architecture from UBC. Joette and her family went through many life-altering difficult situations around the same time they received their son's autism diagnosis. Joette and her husband were given the autism diagnosis without any explanation, information, counseling, or support services. As their son changed from being a different but bright and happy little boy to being anxious, stressed, and a lonely teenager, they felt they were called to do something that would help. She and her husband felt compelled to create their own help for their son and along with other parents and founded the Square Peg Society. They embarked on the journey of informing themselves about current research and best practices for ASD in adults, networking, and service agencies, and working to build opportunities for adults on the spectrum who have aspirations for living independently and purposeful lives.
Well done. Thank you.
Wow, that's really, really admirable. And Joette, tell me a bit about yourself. And I know I shared some of the things, obviously, but I'd like to delve in a little bit deeper into your passions and what exactly took place to where you are today.
As I said, because I was ill and we had this diagnosis, my perception of working as a full-time architect was drastically altered. And I still work as a master gardener and a home and garden design person in a limited way as I'm close to retirement. But what really drove us forward was the fact that our son post-high school was profoundly unhappy. We feared that he might commit suicide. We feared that he was just floundering. And we saw this capable, bright young man which should have been a full, bright future in front of him, and we really didn't know where to go. He was isolated socially in terms of his path through school, and then after high school, we didn't know what to do. So those early years are just, for most parents, especially at that time, figuring it out. And your focus is on your kid, on moving that forward, on how to get them the best supports possible. But then with funding ending at 19, as it does, and no other adult funding or programs in place, particularly for this group of high-functioning individuals, there was fear. And we had to turn outwards. And so we had to embrace other people and look to build our own solutions. Just a little bit of background. it's only very recently that that autism is is better understood. And so until about 2010, it was largely thought of as an intellectual as well as a developmental disability. And since then, we've discovered that about 70% of people on the spectrum do not have an intellectual disability, that they have an IQ of 70 or greater. And so the services, and there were two things: the services and programs that existed were oriented towards children up until that point, and all funding stopped at 19 when kids aged out. And so what happens when they become adults? What happens if theoretically they should be self-supporting working individuals, and yet they're not getting supports because all the supports that were out there assumed that they were not capable of working and sustaining themselves, living independently, or working and contributing to society. Mm-hmm. Hopefully we've changed. Not only is that a misconception of what is possible for everybody, no matter what their intellectual ability is, it certainly is true for these people who have the ability to concentrate, to work, but they weren't getting the supports. And that's
right.
What it be.
Okay. I love your passion, and I really was hoping you could share with our viewers what the Square Peg Society is. And I love the name. And I was wondering if maybe there's some symbolism behind that I'm gathering, perhaps. And how did it come to be? Like, share about that.
Well, what we are is a nonprofit, charitable, mostly volunteer-driven organization supporting adults on the autism spectrum. The key is adults here because, again, as I said, all of the supports prior to us were for children, and particularly that post-high school thing when everything, it's like you fall off a cliff and there's nothing out there for adults. So it's adults first and foremost. The other thing is that previously, girls weren't being diagnosed as well, and so there was an assumption that this portion of the spectrum, girls and people without an intellectual disability, there was nothing out for them, nothing there for them. So we are intending to bridge that gap. We're supporting adults first and foremost, and adults who aspire to living independent lives. So what is needed? So our vision is clearly about independence and inclusion for this broad spectrum.
Nice. And what about the name of the society? Yeah.
So we're, and some people, there are pros and cons because without including autism in the name, we sometimes get missed on search engines and stuff like that. But we just felt it encapsulated that feeling of always not seeming like you fit, right? And the push-pull that our individuals express to us as experiencing through school, I especially if they weren't diagnosed early, there was this lack of understanding of who they were, and they couldn't quite place it. Mm-hmm. They're bright, they're gifted, but they just didn't quite engage or fit in a conventional way. And so the idea of the square peg in the round hole, but we intended to be a little bit lighthearted, that we want also to say we own that place. We own that place of being a little bit different, and that's okay. It's not wrong, it's just different.
Yeah. And so what is your vision and mission of the organization? I know you told me a little bit about it, but I was wondering if there's something defined that you really want to get out there.
Well, so what we like to do is inform. So through our 8 meetings a year, we share information and probe a little bit deeper in autism issues. So we try to cover off the basic things like how to apply for an RDSP, a Registered Disability Savings Plan, how to apply, if you so choose, for persons with disability. We try to advocate for things like, we feel that psychoed assessment should be a given. It shouldn't be an out-of-pocket expense for families. People do get covered, but it's only if the school requests it. If your kid is performing, is not a behavioral issue in the schools, again, they get overlooked. And we're talking, $2,200 or something like that for this psychoed assessment that would really help with clarity and planning for families early on. So that's just one piece of that's missing. Mental health supports, a huge piece that's missing and not a given. And so we try to be advocates for those kinds of supports. And we try to liaise with other organizations to create awareness around specialist employment agencies and what they offer, and employment opportunities for people on the spectrum. And again, we keep pushing for that broader understanding of what autism is, that it's not only retailing and warehousing and jobs or IT, but it's other professional jobs and trades jobs as well. So information. And then always, and we believe so strongly that one cannot succeed if individual aspects of their lives are poked at, but not the whole person isn't taken into account. So no one can succeed without mental health and supports, or mental well-being, and social inclusion. And so we feel that should be part and parcel of the program of the complete package of supports for individuals. It shouldn't only be about employment, but it should be about those other pieces as well. And that's where we see other organizations that are now beginning to do a very good job of the employment aspect, and more needs to be done, but also supports in post-secondary and in schools and post-secondary education. So we think, again, more needs to be done, more mental health supports, more helping to facilitate people becoming independent students in these institutions. But as well, we feel that the mental health support should be there. And so we do a little bit of programming in that way, but it's a big piece. And we're a grassroots organization that has limited funding. So one of our programs, which I might tell you about a little bit later, is the Building a Mental Health Toolkit. And that we will be offering again beginning March 23rd. So that kind of program. But again, we would like to see much broader mental health supports, and that an autism diagnosis should not preclude mental health supports and treatments. But where we do our workshops is that gap where the social integration and support is lacking. So we try to facilitate social inclusion and social engagement through fun activities. And that's what one of our programs is about.
Nice. So if somebody is having an issue, they feel that they're lacking support as an adult, like a family, if somebody who is on the autism spectrum, like, are you an advocacy organization, or that's what I'm hearing? Is that right?
In part.
Yeah.
I would love to take on a bigger piece of that. We need more bodies for sure. But yes, and in that we think there are still big pieces to be changed that we need to change through government action and through existing supports. But one step at a time, one family at a time. And so, for example, that is often the situation where a family will hear about us and will talk to us. And so I try to touch bases with them, try to find out what their individual most needs at this point in time, what the family most needs. And direct them. If it's employment, then direct them to these specialist programs. And if they're just starting out, it might be a pre-employment program. If it's mental health, I try to direct them in that area as well. And if it's social engagement, then often we're so it's our social programs. And I mean, that is a very challenging road, because many people on the spectrum, they have a social deficit that's partly created by how they were treated in society and partly inherent. And so getting them to open up and to be part of something is challenging. And so it's a thing that's nurtured over many workshops and programs over a long period of time. Yeah. And we also find that it needs to be guided. We tried initially to do social programs that were, we thought at that time naively, we'll just start them off, and the young adults will take over. And they were just not able to do so because they didn't have the social confidence or the skills. And so now, with all of our workshops, we hire experienced, qualified facilitators who will guide the process along. And hopefully some connections will build up with individuals that they'll be able to take away outside the program. All of that takes funding, though.
Oh, for sure, which is an ongoing thing for obviously any nonprofit, right? Mm-hmm. And you're doing such amazing work. And I was wondering, you mentioned the building a mental health toolkit, and we build toolkits as well. And I also know of Games and Gathering. I was wondering if you could share a little bit about those services. I know we talked about Advocacy, and maybe a little bit about those.
Okay, so the workshops that we do in-house ourselves are aimed at mental and social well-being, right? And so over the winter, we've done a Games and Gathering series, which is 1 evening per week for 4 months, through the winter. We've got 2 more months to go, and each week has a different activity. You don't have to sign up for all of them. They're free, but they require that you register. And the idea is that one of them is a games night, an online. Everything's online, of course, these days. An online games night, a movie night where you pre-watch the movie in advance, and then there's a discussion. And then another is a yoga and discussion where you can talk afterwards about your yoga practice or your body issues or struggles, and we do a kind of group meditation afterwards. And then the fourth one is drama games, and that's role playing, and so role playing and body language and that sort of thing. And we have a behavioral interventionist and an actor who are the facilitators for that one. And they have also run both an acting program with us and a program called Confident Conversations, which will run again in May. And that, of course, is aimed at social skills development. But they're all supposed to be fun, and they're open to anyone. So you can join your autistic individual, any adult, I should say, 19 and older. And so it doesn't have to be for this Games and Gathering series, it doesn't have to be anyone on the spectrum. It's anyone who wants this social engagement at this particular time. And the whole point of that is to open ourselves to the broader society.
Right.
I'll tell you about the mental health toolkit first, but then I have to go back to that engagement of the broader society, because I think that has to do with stigma. And okay, so the mental health toolkit is 4 sessions. It was a thing that we run before, and each session is focused on particular mental health tools. It might be external visualization of a problem. It might be mindfulness. It might be I don't know. There are 4 basic tools, and then they're directed at resolving issues that commonly come up for people, stress and anxiety at work, depression, those kinds of things. And it's to give you a package of skills to respond to life's challenges. And that is only open to adults on the autism spectrum, but the games and gathering are open to everyone. So this whole idea of stigma, and stigma, we understand, comes from within, and it also comes from without. And stigma has to do, like from within, often is a consequence of not of previous negative past experiences, of that not feeling of fitting in, of not having a diagnosis or not having acceptance or understanding of that diagnosis within you, within your family. And it often, it manifests itself as a lack of self-confidence, as a blockage, which is inhibiting people from being the best they can be, trying new experiences, saying openly, I don't know this, could you explain this again? You know, those kinds of things. And so the mental health components of everything we do are about addressing that, right? The stigma from within. The stigma from without, and this was really brought home to me by Dr. Grace Arachi. She's a psychology professor at SFU, and she's the director of the Autism, what's the name? The Autism Disorders and Research, Autism and Developmental Disorders Lab at SFU. And she has done some research on bias and disability. And in her studies, she's found that a judgment of differentness occurs in seconds. You see a video clip of somebody and you judge them as being odd or different. And not only are they perceived as different, but that there's a negative attribute to that. So they're seen as less capable, less intelligent, less attractive, whatever, right? And at first, I felt like the weight of the world dropped on my shoulders when I heard that. I thought, like, how can we overcome this? It's impossible. But then I realized that, well, you have to pick yourself up from that and move forward, right? And so I understood that it's got to be one activity, one event, and it occurs over time. That you break down barriers, stigma, by exposure to individuals. You see that we're not so to be feared. We're asking that if you participate over games online or you participate in a yoga class, that fosters a sense of community that is overcomable. The difference will always be there. It's a lifetime diagnosis. It's okay. It's not wrong. It's just there. And that it is something that can be embraced by our community and by others. And so that's what we're aiming for in opening it up. And just the understanding that our individuals are not going to live in an autism enclave for the whole of their lives. They're way too capable. They have way too much to offer. And so they will need to go out in the world. And that means that they'll be in workplaces, in school environments, in social situations with the neurotypical population. And so we need to give them the skills that they need to function. Not to change themselves, not to do a makeover, but to allow them to get what they want, make the connections that they need by understanding and communicating effectively.
Definitely. We only have 5 minutes left, and I love your passion. But one of the biggest reasons why I asked you to come on today was about the BC Autism Award for Community Impact. And I was wondering, in relation to your work that you're so passionate about, what was that like for you, and what has that meant for you?
Well, first and foremost is that it's an indicator that we're that given that when high school ends, there's nothing for adults or nothing really directed at adults. And so we wanted to let people know that we're out there to try and address that gap. And secondly, so again, we're focused on adults and we're focused on building independence and inclusion, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that it was heartwarming because when appreciation comes from within your own community, it's all the more valued. So we were just thrilled.
Nice. I love to see that. And Autism BC is one of our official partners. We absolutely have worked with them on their Stigma-Free zone designation recently. So that's been exciting. And I'm really excited to connect with you further after this interview and see what kind of things potentially that we could do together. We really feel everything that you feel around stigma. Stigma-Free society is about that whole piece that you just talked about: awareness, understanding, and acceptance. So I really love what you're doing. And what is next for the Square Peg Society? Like, what are you looking forward to in the upcoming year here?
We will run additional sessions of the Confident Conversations and Love in the Time of COVID, which is about dating and intimacy in the time of COVID. And so it's about building intimate relationships or deeply personal relationships and sexual health in when so much of us are dealing with online situations and stuff like that. So that's one. The Confident Conversations. We've got 2 more months to go in the Games and Gathering, and we have this. And then we have to raise more money, so we have to figure that out. And we also have this concept of maybe trying a work skills mentorship where we have people that we know who have skills that might be prepared to take on an autistic young person to help them resume boost by building specific skills. Like it might be some basic bookkeeping. It might be building a website, or something that isn't a complete course that they have to sign up for, but short-term internships.
Mm-hmm.
We could do a one-on-one kind of experience with.
Nice. And those experiences are so helpful. And when you have mentorship and people that believe in you, I love it. And I was wondering, Joette, is there anything you would like to say in final words for this interview to anybody out there?
Okay, so just to, what would we say to parents and what would we say to parents of non-autistic people? So the first thing with parents is that we would like them to develop a transition plan for their young person early on so that they don't have that cliff experience that we had. The other thing is, as much as you can within your family dynamic, own the diagnosis, discuss it within your families and extended families, and understand that there is life after diagnosis, and that there's lots of hope and potential more and more today for their young people. For parents and educators outside the autism experience, what we would like to see is that opening of hearts and minds, of saying that differentness is not to be feared, and that there is a growth opportunity in reaching out and extending an invitation. I was told by another parent when my son was in elementary that, their family has decided that their kid gets to invite whoever they want to their birthday parties, and that excluded my son, right? And I accepted that at the time, but now I see there is an opportunity for parents and educators to say, reach out. It doesn't have to be a closed society, that it's not your besties that should be surrounding you all of the time. There's room for us to be bigger than that.
I love that. Thank you very much for your inspiration, dedication, and passion. So I really look forward to staying in touch with you. And thank you, Joette. Thank you, everybody, for watching today. We really appreciate you tuning in, and we will be back soon with another Facebook Live. So stay tuned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrea.
Bye.
Bye.